Artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI, is a new piece of technology that is starting to sweep the world and really blow the minds of many people who thought this kind of technology wasn't going to be out there for years if not decades down the line. A once sci-fi concept is becoming, well, reality right before our eyes and at an extremely fast pace. And this is easily one of the most complex and debatable topics in all of society nowadays. AI is here and it's coming and it's going to be even better tomorrow than it is today, and the AI we have access to today is better than what we had yesterday. This is a trend, it's going to continue, so let's talk about it. And let's talk about it mainly through the confines of the video games industry, how it can shape the games industry, the possible ramifications, and just the direction going forward. And I feel it's important to understand some ground rules for this discussion, as it's easily one of the most heated topics and debates going on right now. One, this is not just limited to video games. This is a massive topic that humanity on the whole are going to have to come to the table and have some kind of discussion about in good faith. And two, much like technology, it's not going to go anywhere. The Pandora's Box is open. The general trend of humanity is towards further and further technological progress and innovation. This, I can't imagine, will be any different. However, the rules and the rule book essentially are now out the proverbial window. Ask people of years ago what some of the last industries to be automized or replaced by AI would be, and people would say creative pursuits, such as the arts or music and whatnot. However, it's quickly becoming understood that, funnily enough, those are some of the first to be on the chopping block, or the proverbial chopping block. And there's been a lot of pushback, because a large segment of video game production is, funnily enough, tied to these creative pursuits. Hell, video games are creative by nature. They're not just a whole bunch of lines of code. They come into terms with artistic direction, styles, character models, player models, NPC models, enemy models, animation styles, pacing, writing, voiceover, lighting, sound effects, etc., etc. There's a lot of creativity that goes into the creation and production of a video game. And I feel this is where we come to our first kind of, I don't know if I want to call it a fallacy, but something akin to that, let's say, where a lot of people believe that it will always be the case that it's easy to identify what is human-made and what is AI-made. And when you look at a lot of things that are created by AI, some of them can be kind of difficult to ascertain the true identity of, but for the most part, if I show you something AI made, you can probably at least get some kind of uncanny valley feel from it to be able to identify if it's AI or not. That won't always be the case, though. And this is the thing, and the real jumping off point for this whole discussion lately has been OpenAI's new piece of technology, Sora. No, not the character from Kingdom Hearts. Essentially, what Sora is you give it a text prompt, and it puts out a video. I know that sounds wild, but some of the creations and examples they have on their website are absolutely mind-blowing, because I feel a large issue that a lot of conversation around AI has is it's rooted in the present. And people assume or just say, well, it's not perfect, so is it really a threat? The issue with that idea, and the issue with that notion, it's incredibly short-sighted. AI has rapidly evolved and progressed over even the last few months, if not days, let alone years. What used to be science fiction yesterday is becoming reality today and will be history tomorrow. This is not some kind of gradual process. This is happening, and it's happening now. And to see where AI used to be on this field necessarily with text prompt video generating AI software, from where it was even a month ago, let alone a week ago, to where it's at now with Sora, is absolutely mind-blowing. And it's showing a clear and unabashed trajectory that AI is going under. And there's been one argument that I've kind of heard that I do sort of agree with. It was a TikTok comment that I have no idea where the video originated. Actually, I might, but I don't know where the comment is. And the person essentially said, well, there's going to be diminishing returns as to how much you can actually progress and make it even better in that last 10%. Like, you may be able to break through this first 90% to go from something that looks absolutely fake and unreal to something that looks sort of real. You can get like 90% of the way there relatively easily, but that last 10% could be a massive drag and slog to perfect the minutia of it all. And like, maybe that's the case, but again, this is happening fast. And we're already at this stage where I would argue this is past 90%. Is it still janky? Yeah. The walk animations in particular, and a few animations here and there. But again, this is from a simple text prompt, and this is just the beginning. This technology will get better, it will get refined, and it will adapt and change, and eventually it will get to the point where AI is able to detect the issues and optimize itself, or to even improve itself. And we'll get to that cyclical nature where AI is able to make even better and more functioning AI. And it's not going to stop at simple video generation. Now, I'm no expert in this, but I would imagine the main difference between creating an AI image to an AI video from a text prompt is just having it create a bunch of AI images, then having some kind of software or algorithm to try and say, okay, change it up slightly according to what kind of motions we think are relatively accurate. I imagine it's way more nuanced and complex than that, but you can see how you can go from point A to point B when it comes to a text prompt for an image to a text prompt for a video, because a video is just a series of images. But it's not like this is going to stop. It's going to continue to evolve and change and augment. Hell, the major meme on the internet for the past year or so has been AI voice generation, with things like AI presidents or AI SpongeBob and stuff like that. And it's been used for memes and it's been funny, we can admit that. And we can also see where nefarious activities can come into play here as well. And like most technology, it can be easily viewed as a double-edged sword. Now, in regards to video games specifically, this is the needed groundwork to establish to understand where AI currently is, but also where it can continue to go. Because I think the biggest mistake people make when it comes to predicting technology and predicting possible issues is they're too short-sighted. They view the reality of the now and of today as the issues that will exist tomorrow. Eventually, some sweaty nerd out there is going to lock themselves in a room to the point where they come out of that room and AI is an even step above where it is today. And these issues will become minimalized. They may still exist, but to an extremely less effect. More detail will be added, more generation, etc., and all of that. And like I said, when we hit that critical point where AI will be able to do all of that for us, well then, welcome to a new world. And when it comes to the video games industry, a lot of people worry because some of the charm of a lot of these stories is that they're made by humans, and that they have an important message to tell. Not for every game. This is important to bear in mind. And for the mass market at large, they want something enjoyable and engaging. This is important to bear in mind because this requires a lot of nuance because there's no broad brush that you can strike here outside of the singular notion that if it's engaging and valuable enough to the consumer, then the mass market will decide if they want to buy it or not. Palworld is a game that had a lot of accusations that I'm pretty sure turned out to be fake, but at the time, a lot of accusations were made in regards to the use of AI technology for the creation of various things in the game. Again, I'm fairly certain that stuff turned out to be false, and that someone was just lying about it all, but the accusations existed. But what happened with Palworld? Well, it blew up and became massively successful and popular. And while you can point to the current player numbers, I'd argue, well, people are finishing the game. And the game's still in development. There's still going to be more Palworld down the line. But it was shown at that time that the value proposition of Palworld was really, really, really tantalizing for a lot of people because it was a good game. I played it, I enjoyed it. But now, let's assume a theoretical game. And let's assume a theoretical game comes out that utilizes AI in whatever facet you want to argue about. Whether it's voice acting, dialogue, writing, world generation, etc., etc., etc. And you can butt actually this conversation with saying, well, how do we define procedurally generated? Would that technically be artificial intelligence and stuff like that? There's layers to this conversation, right? And it's important to understand here, there is no real side to argue for. AI is coming, and this is the cold reality. You don't stop technology. Look in a history book. Look at any age of civilization. You don't stop technology for long. AI is coming. It's going to change things, and it's going to happen. It's already here. But it has its foot in the door. It's not fully in. It doesn't have its coat off and the hat off on the hat rack, at least yet. But it's in the foyer. And this will sound cold, because it is, but it's also reality. It's adapt or die. People had this conversation back with the printing press. They had this conversation when newspaper went to, well, computers and digital screens. We've had this conversation in some form or fashion every step of the way, and it never stopped technology from innovating and progressing, ever. And it's scary, because, well, it's not like this is limited to one medium. Like, this is not a conversation that is limited to video games. I'm just going to try and focus in on video games for the most part, but a lot of groundwork is needed to actually contextualize how it can affect video games, right? Like, AI is a multi-headed hydra. It's going to have a claw or a hand in every pie. And it's going to get better. It's going to become more difficult to ascertain if it's real or AI generated. And there's going to be problems that we can't even imagine right now. And consequences that we can't even imagine. And potentially there's also going to be a lot of positives that we haven't even considered. Like, that's the funny thing with AI. That's the funny thing with technology. Like, you look back in the days of the Nintendo Virtual Boy and be like, how much of a flaming piece of garbage this thing is. And just see where virtual reality has come. Technology is an awe-inspiring thing. It can breed fear, but also amazement in equal parts. So let's summarize up to this point. Technology is coming, and it's calling collect. It's going to continue to get better. It's going to become continuously more difficult and strenuous to identify when something is created via AI or by a person. And every industry will be affected by it in some shape or form. And no matter of whining or complaining really in regards to this subject is going to change that unflappable reality. The world's an adapt or die world. And if you want to see just how quickly things will change, look at Nvidia. Look how quickly they kind of shifted and altered their business strategy away from necessarily just computer parts, but to AI. They made that pivot rather quickly. And don't be surprised when more and more companies start to do the same. Because what may be unpopular right now may not turn out to be unpopular tomorrow. And the companies that tend to get the biggest are the ones that are able to get their foot in the door the quickest. And there's going to be a lot of growing pains, and I imagine there's going to be like a tidal wave of games, dude. Oh, I can see it now. There's going to be so many games that come out that like say or like advertise themselves as AI enhanced or whatever, and they're gonna be so god awful, dude. Oh my god, the level design about to like take a nosedive. That or we're about to get some of the best level design of all time. It's gonna be like one of the two, right? Like we're gonna get dialogue that feels like it was written by a second grader that's like trying to do like Persona fan fiction or whatever. Oh god, it's gonna be rough. And I imagine for a good while it'll be easy to spot and identify, and we can all point and laugh at their like bad attempts at utilizing this technology. And dude, I can already imagine the think pieces and like the freaking articles that are gonna come out being like, is AI ruining gaming? God, I can see it now. Like there's going to be a lot of growing pains in regards to not only learning, but also the application of this technology of AI. Like there were for virtual reality. Remember when it gave everyone motion sickness a few years ago? I remember that. When they couldn't really nail down movement. I don't know if they've even fully done that. But now we got like entire RPGs in virtual reality. Like what are we talking about here? This is the thing. Never live under a false pretense that technology has stopped evolving. It is always progressing. There's going to be some sweaty nerd out there that locks themselves in a room, and when they come out of that room, a new advancement in AI is going to be born. And it's going to be just a little bit more difficult to ascertain if it's AI or human. And it's going to be a little bit more seamless, or apply to a little bit more things generally. And like, that's the thing. You have to look future first in regards to this. Because I guarantee you, we're going to have a swath of games that try to implement AI, and they're going to do it god-awfully. I guarantee you. But eventually, the utilization and the knowledge of this will sink in. People will come to terms with it. They'll understand how to utilize this technology and how to utilize it effectively. And then all of a sudden, the conversation will shift. And it may be gradual, or like what we're seeing with Sora right now from OpenAI, it'll be quick and abrupt. And the weird thing, the thing that terrifies a lot of people out there, is how quickly this may happen. What happens when we get the first AI-generated video game? Fully AI-generated. From character models, to voice, to dialogue, level design, mission objectives, the entire game, all coded by AI. created and crafted by AI. The limitations of AI tomorrow may not necessarily be the limitations of today. All it takes is one nerd out there, or a collective of nerds, to figure out a way for AI to create art without other art as a base. Because right now, a lot of the AI art out there has to pool from a lot of other art, which is where a lot of the stolen art accusations come from. What happens when someone figures out how to do it without taking anyone else's? What happens when that technology goes out to the public? The one defense against AI art at that point, the one real main one, was the theft. What happens when that argument no longer holds water? Because again, AI technology is not going away, and it's not going to stagnate. It's going to continue, as all technology in the past has. Now that we've had that groundwork laid, essentially, I generally prefer to have a bit of an optimistic spin on things. And I think there is room to be optimistic in terms of the kinds of games that may be able to come out from AI. And I think the types of games that will be able to come out are the games where it's just not feasible for people to do by themselves. And I think, at least in the short term, when AI can be utilized as a tool by people to create cool things, that's its best application right now. For instance, what is one of the major arguments a lot of people out there make in regards to why certain games that rely on player choice may feel too limiting or not have enough interesting endings to really satisfy all the player choice the game has had up to that point? Well, the problem is, every branching path, you then have to create a whole new experience that's nearly equivalent for both of those paths. And if you add more and more player choice on that, it expands and extrapolates exponentially and becomes extremely difficult. And at some point in that flowchart, just becomes too much for people to realistically do in a timely or cost-effective manner. Insert AI into it and just say, hey, here's roughly what we want here. Take this, make what we need. Bada bing, bada boom. That has an interesting idea. That's an interesting application. To lean into player choice and to lean into this idea of giving players as many choices as they want and to have them be fleshed out and fulfilling while utilizing some kind of artistic blueprint to guide the whole process. Like having the writer be the architect and then the AI be the robots building the building, essentially. As a loose metaphor, right? Don't read into it too much. What's another example? Ever played a game where you can change your character's name and then they always have to call you something different outside of the name you chose? Yeah. Remember how much notoriety Fallout 4... This will be able to tell who's been on the internet for a while. Remember when Fallout 4 came out, and then one robot had like a collective list of like 1,000 names or whatever, and if your name was one of that list, he would say your name, and it was wild back in the day, and it blew people's minds? What happens when you can just use AI to do that for everything? Imagine playing Persona, for instance, and all the characters just call you the name that you inputted. Oh, but it'll sound weird. AI will get better, and it'll sound more natural and seamless. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ethical quandaries associated with all of this, right? In regards to how do you pay the voice actors, etc., 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 and all that kind of stuff. But when we look at this strictly from a consumer POV here, because again, this is a very broad topic. When we look at this strictly from a consumer POV, there's a lot of potential for some really cool innovation and some really cool features that can be implemented on a more broad spectrum, right? Like, that has a lot of potential. Even in regards to, like, say, OpenAI Sora. Have you ever played a game that has a really cool cutscene at the very beginning or at the end of the game, but for, like, most of the middle part, there's, like, very few of them? And you're like, next time you see them, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot these were in the game. What happens when you can just have AI make them all? Have someone who's really good at text prompts or whatever to fine-tune it on a moment-to-moment basis, but just let AI do all the grunt work. A lot of things that generally took a lot of time, or too much time, or were too cost ineffective, all of a sudden could become far more available and affordable. And there's a lot of, like, other conversations surrounding this in terms of, okay, how much energy does this, like, technology with, like, AI generation text to video, how much energy does that take to make, and how long does it take to make? Again, today's issue that could be solved tomorrow. I think there's a lot of reasons to be worried or to be even scared, and I think that's entirely fine. Because when giant changes to the way we live happen, that's a natural human reaction, is to be a little bit scared of things. Or maybe even become a little bit nihilistic, as we all just assume the worst case scenarios, but at the same time, I think there's some advantages here that may be juxtaposed with a lot of ethical quandaries and things that we'll need to have a conversation about. There's a lot of room for really cool moments in video games coming up here. And as a tool in a developer's kit, it can be utilized to really interesting ideas and lengths. And I think there's a lot of potential here. Absolutely. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's a lot of potential here. And I think there's another aspect to all of this that people need to understand, and that is the market at mass will not care. They largely never do. Every now and then there may be an exception, but for the most part, they want a game that's fun and engaging and enjoyable. And if AI is able to not produce that, then they just won't gravitate to AI games. But if eventually AI is able to nail that down and to make games that are enjoyable and have mass market appeal, then people will buy them. The market will decide. That is the reality we live in. And here's a takeaway. And I'm not saying whether or not this is right or wrong here. But let's say a game comes out and says, we didn't use a single human voice in this game. We used entirely AI-generated voice acting. But it's good. How many people? Let's just say this. How much of an impact do you think that would have on the sales of the game? You can argue maybe some. I don't think it would be a lot though, because it depends on the quality of the final product. The thing that consumers are tasked with asking themselves one simple question: do I want to buy this or not? And eventually, AI will progress to the point where consumers look at that piece of consumer item and say yes. Because like I said, it's not just a matter of replacing what is already the status quo. There's a lot of overhead, there's a lot of potential here to expand on things. People love player choice. Look at the games that have been really successful the last few years. People love player choice. They love player agency. They love having their choices matter and to have consequence. But it's hard to do that consistently. It really is. Because the more events in the future are affected by choices you make as the player in the past, then the more and more scenarios that have to be made, the more and more differences that have to exist. And that at some point just becomes too much to chew on. At least for the developers, realistically speaking. We're only human, and that's the limitation. That's the thing right there, that one sentence. We're only human. AI doesn't get tired. It doesn't get exhausted. It doesn't need vacation. It doesn't need breaks. It doesn't need to wait for inspiration. You tell it what to do, and it will do it, and it will continue to get better at doing it. And eventually, it will be able to identify its own issues, its own fallacies, its own inaccuracies, and fix them. Self-improvement. AI is going to come. It's going to come quick, and it's going to come fast, and it's going to come hard. And there's a lot of potential for cool video games as a result of that. And I think especially in regards to procedural level design, but also storytelling. Not necessarily having AI write and make an entire story, but to be utilized as a tool to have the player choices affect actions and consequences down the line. There's a large possibility there. And let's say you have one branch, and that's all humanity can do in regards to how many branching paths the game can have. AI can just give you an infinite number of branches potentially. Not infinite, file size and all that, but you know what I mean. It can drastically add on to that. And that may be too much for some, but it won't be for others. I talked about procedural level design. Think about for roguelikes and games like that. You ever realize that some of those levels, you can even look at RPGs and stuff like that. Ever notice that the levels can feel kind of samey after a while? In terms of layout and overall design? There's only a certain number of blocks you can put together like Lego pieces. Only so many things you can put in and out to mix and match. AI adds to that, expands on it, can add more intricacy and detail where it couldn't be before, or it was unrealistic to be before. And that's the thing. Things that were bound by human limitation all of a sudden become more and more accessible and possible. I don't think we're there yet, but we're getting there. We're going to get there. Hell, another major thing, game performance. Look at some of this new tech on PC right now, with things like frame generation, or DLSS, or FSR. Frame generation utilizes AI to create frames based on the information, the context of actual generated frames from the game, but then uses AI to make supplemental ones to artificially boost your FPS. And look at this, and look at the performance gains on some of these games with this. It's insane technology. And it can make weaker hardware feel like it's pumping out way more and above its pay grade. So there's an entire reality here, just in this one singular field, that could and will deserve a video all of its own to make PC gaming far more accessible and like less of an upfront cost. If you need weaker hardware that can artificially like go more pound for pound than something else, sure, it may not necessarily be completely created by the GPU, but again, eventually AI technology will progress to the point where most people don't see a difference and they won't care. And you'll be able to buy a GPU or a computer at a far less cost that is able to punch way above its pay grade that other computers above its pay grade can do naturally. That is really powerful and promising tech. It really is. And it's insane to think about, because it's not like the only piece of technology we're going to have for all eternity will be frame generation. Other ideas, other pieces of technology will come out. Look at some of the new techniques people are coming up with the new Unreal Engine. It's insane. Being able to put out way more detail for even less of a performance hit. The way AI is going to affect gaming is not just through game design, but through the interfaces that we play these video games with. We're already seeing PC gaming change in regards to things like FSR, DLSS, frame generation, and for these games to be way better on a performance side of things than they have any right to be. It's wild to think about in a lot of ways. It really is. And then when you stop to think that this technology is only going to get better, more advanced, but also more interwoven in all of these systems, what will tomorrow look like? And that's hard to say. I don't think AI is something that needs to be feared. It's technology. It's adapt or die. At the end of the day, cowering in a corner, fearing it's not going to change or resolve anything. But conversation needs to happen, and realistic conversation that looks to the future needs to happen. Getting worked up and riled up on issues that are going to get patched out of AI down the road is just not going to achieve anything in the long run. Trying to say like, oh, Sora's not going to change much because, well, you can still see some jank in the animations. Okay, it's gonna get patched, people. Better versions will come out down the line, or entire new programs will come out down the line that where these issues are far less severe or just don't exist. Or the issues will be so less severe that they're barely even noticeable. And that's where the conversation needs to lie. Looking ahead, looking at where this technology is going and what it could possibly achieve tomorrow. Because what it achieves today is really short term and won't be applicable down the road. And it's a hard conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to happen. And I don't think there's only negatives to this. I laid out a few positives in this video. PC gaming can be more accessible, and limitations in game development that were happening because of human limitations can now be broken out of and expanded on, and be made more affordable or more accessible and more widespread. There is positive aspects to this. There's a whole boatload of negatives and a whole boatload of worries, but that's technology. That's innovation. But we have to be willing to have these conversations. To not only look at the man in the mirror, but look at the man in the mirror and what he's going to look like tomorrow. And with that, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and leave a comment down below with your thoughts on where AI in video games can go. What are you more excited about? What are you more worried about? Let me know. Let's have this conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video and you want to see more content. I would greatly appreciate it, and hit the bell icon to be notified for when I upload and stream in the future. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye, everybody. Until we meet again.